Hello, everyone. It's Marie here. Hope you're having a great day, night, afternoon, wherever you are. So, today I wanted to hop on just to check on you, see how things are going, but also wanted to take some time to reflect. Today's one of those days where I'm like reflecting on where I've been. For those who might be listening later, it's April 15, and I was thinking about April 15, years ago. I don't even think, probably over a decade ago, is the day I got laid off from my first full time job. At the time, I was a new mom. My son was barely a year and a half. And so I had this amazing job in healthcare, and I went in April 15, just like today in the morning, and I got the pink slip. And that day turned everything around. Of course, at that moment, my world was spinning. I wasn't really being reflective and seeing the lessons in it. But years later, many moons later, I've been able to really look and see what did that really mean? Did that change my mission, my purpose, my why? Um, and how did that get shifted later on? Because for me, I grew up, I'm originally from Haiti. My family always taught me about education, and so I thought if I went to school, get a good job, everything will go well. Show up early, leave late, go above and beyond, I would be guaranteed a permanent job, right? And so for me, it was just a shock to my whole system to be able to do that. And knowing I went, got the degrees, got the experience, and thinking I'm safe, right? Because when you apply for a full time job, we learn you can have it for as long as you want, right? And to me, that even redefined the word permanent, right? I now know there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a permanent job. But looking back, it was just such a scary time. And that's the moment, that experience, that life event truly changed everything for me. Because during that time, I was so stressed out because it took me a long time to find another job. I literally felt like I just gave birth. And so I was worried about how I was going to take care of my son, how I was going to keep a roof over my head. Um, and what do I tell people, right? I was so concerned about what are they going to think because I blame myself. I was like, I can't even keep a job with all this education and experience. You can't keep a job. And so I blame myself for that because I thought, could I have done something differently? Could I have worked harder? Could I have gotten another degree? Could I have been, you know, do something where my supervisor, whoever was in charge to make that decision, would have think of me differently to keep me, right? And that really messed up also my idea of self-worth, how I looked at myself, because that job at that time, I was like early 30s, right? And I allowed the job to define me. And so now without a job, who am I, right? Who am I? And I feel like that question is coming up for a lot of people during the pandemic who may have been furloughed or even lost their job or even decided, you know what, they can't do this anymore. And so for me, for a long time, I avoided that day. I try not to think about that day at all because it was such a major loss and but a blow to who I am. My identity was so wrapped up in having a job. And I didn't tell anyone for a long time. I barely told maybe one or two people who were very close to me. And so for a while, I pretended I still had a job because I just couldn't face it. And I think that level of stress, that level of just feeling so literally that I didn't have any value really defined the work that I do now as a wellness coach in terms of how do we take care of ourselves? How do we stay grounded even when a whole world is falling apart or the rug has been pulled from under us? And I had to learn how to still be me and not have a paycheck. What does that look like on a day to day? And how do I continue to really take care of a little person, right? So I had to still keep it together, even though deep down I was really falling apart. And and now I can talk about it without feeling like I was a complete failure. That I don't see myself reflected. I'm less than because I don't have a job. And it's an experience. It's unfortunate it happened again. I was able to find a job years later. And then in 2015, I was laid off again. And so I cope with it very differently than the first time. But it's an experience I don't wish on anyone, because in this culture, the job truly defined many of us. What we do day in and day out, where we go and check in and clock in. And I think that's also that life event that really pushed me to think about, what else can I do? Can I do something where I don't work for somebody else? Can I have a job alongside a business? Can I create something that truly make me happy, that I can help other people? Because that's always been my passion and my mission since I was a teenager. In Boston, I've always worked in nonprofit as well, where I, run a lot of after school program, making sure people were getting community resources and getting help. And I love being the go-to person. But I realized at some point that wasn't enough, particularly when you work for somebody else, because at any moment they can decide, you we don't need your services anymore. We don't need that role anymore, right? Things can just be changed. But how do I stay standing? How do I still be who I am despite the struggles and the challenges that I'm facing as a human being? And so today I wanted to take that time just to remember that day, even though it wasn't a pleasant experience. But I'm in a place now where I can really look at it and see, what did I learn from that day, and I'm grateful years later that now, I can still have a job, but knowing it's not permanent. I can say yes to opportunities that are in alignment with who I am, and not accept, jobs or even opportunities out of desperation. I was so desperate when I lost that job that I would have taken anything. And I did take anything because I needed to have a roof over my head. I needed to make sure that my son was taken care of. Again, it's so challenging as a single mother, with a job. So imagine when you solely relying on unemployment benefits. And so for me, that was the lesson where I had to think about, how do I make sure that I'm not depending on one stream of income? And I think I got too comfortable thinking a job was the answer to everything, and that I was always going to be able to have one, or one would be enough for me to take care of myself and my family. And now, really looking at, how do I create a legacy that's not dependent on a paycheck or a job, and to know my worth outside of a job, to know my worth outside of, being rejected, right? Not me as a person, but when you apply for so many jobs and you hear no, or um, you're not the person that they're looking for, and to not tie that with who I am as a person, right? To know that it's solely the job. It doesn't mean that I myself am a failure. And so all that, just to be able to grow from that experience, and to now know, in spite of that layoff, in spite of being unemployed for so long, that I am worthy, that ultimately everything is still working out for me, and not feel like the whole world is falling apart because I don't have a job or that experience happened. And so for many of you, I don't know how many of you have had similar experience, just to be able to look back and see how far that I've come. And so many great things have happened since then, and not to hold on to that and seeing only the negative of it, but also there's a lesson in everything. There's a lesson in everything. But sometimes when we're in it, it's hard to see it. But in hindsight, we can see those lessons. And so for me, I would say, um, the top three is just the idea, not just the idea, but the belief that I am worthy in spite of those negative experiences. And to know that I get to define what success is to me. I get to define that. And it's not just having a job, but who am I being in the world? How am I helping? How am I contributing? How am I creating my legacy? And how am I creating a community, a growing community? And to me, community has always been part of what gives me energy, what makes me feel alive. And so even during the pandemic, the idea of creating a virtual community, but also sustaining the relationship that I already have. And I think when we good and bad experiences, it really sort of reminds you of what your priority is or what your priorities are. And so for me, in that moment, I realized quickly what was really important. But ultimately, the reason today is to look at, okay, why did I decide to really focus on self care? To show other people that prioritizing themselves is not selfish, to take care of themselves no matter what's going on around them. And to really think about, I used to be that person. So the people that I get to help today, I used to be them. I used to be burnout, stressed out, overwhelmed, and literally just not sleeping because I didn't know where the next check was going to come from or where I was going to find the next job. And especially after hearing no so many times. And the last lesson I would say is related to the no. The idea that when I hear no now, when something doesn't work out the way I expected, I don't tie that with to my identity, to who I am as a human being. That I don't see me as who and what's being said no to, right? But it's really about the person saying no to the thing, right? It could be no to the job that I'm applying for, no to my services that I'm offering, no to an invitation, that I may be offering, and to really seeing no sometimes as a blessing. I see that layoff now as a blessing because after that, I had so many opportunities that I probably would have passed on because I'm already working. So I wouldn't even be looking. I was safe, right? But now I know there's no such thing. There's no such thing as job safety. There's no such thing as anything that's permanent, right? And so now I'm more open. I'm looking ahead, but ultimately I am more comfortable failing forward and seeing failure as always an opportunity to learn and to grow and to start reimagine what doesn't the next chapter looks like. But also the idea of to continue planting seeds, right? That it's not over. There's a season. My mother used to say that all the time. There's a season for everything. And to know the season does change, right? And things do get better. And ultimately, like I said, everything is working out for me. And so today I wanted to take the time just to truly reflect on that because many times we just want to bury the bad stuff, right? And now as I grow more into myself and who I am, I like facing those hard things face head on, right? Face them head on instead of just bearing them and hoping like they're never gonna come up. And to me, it's another way of preventing me being triggered because somebody may say something and then boom, like everything comes flooding back. So I'm grateful that I can even have the conversation and not fall apart. And even if I do, get emotional, to me is to be able to stay in that moment, recognize it for what it is, and still be able to see the good, all the things that I'm grateful for, there's a lot of goodness in my life that I can be grateful for, in spite, despite, and probably because of those those major life events that may have happened. And so ultimately, I would say my purpose, my why, my mission for the work that I'm doing now as a wellness coach, as an author, even as a parent, is because of those experiences, those lived experiences. And I get to share those with all of you. So thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. I see favors here, Dub, the Stephen Shields Radio Bear, Victory, 72 The Architect, Graciela, Martin is here, Donna, Christian, and Mike, Mara, Zach, Daisy, Chandra is here, Sharante, and Charlene. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. And many of you will be listening after the live, or even I'm going to be posting this on other platforms so y'all can get a chance to share. What is your one life event that changed your purpose, your why, right? That really helped you think about the season that you're in, but also reimagining the next chapter. The next chapter, right? Sometimes we get paralyzed and we crumble because of that one bad thing that happened, or that bad experience that we're having, or something someone said, or something that didn't happen the way you expected it. And so how do we shift our mindset? How do we shift and see it for what it is, but ultimately seeing that experience? We're gonna grow from that. We're gonna get through it. But sometimes just recognizing it, right? And so in this moment, and even looking back, and I'm sure sometimes I'm like, what would you say? What would you say um, to that younger version of yourself, particularly on the day that you got that pink slip, right? And like I said, my whole world was spinning. And I think I would say to myself, to give myself grace, that in this moment, you're not a failure. That pink slip does not define you, and your future is brighter than you know, right? My future was much brighter than I knew in that moment, and that I will bounce back. Oh my goodness, I would love for somebody to have told me, like, I would have bounced back stronger, bolder, more determined, and I would persevere. I would persevere in spite, despite, because of that one life event. And so I'm grateful for that now. And I hope for those of you who are listening, really think about those experiences and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. There's so much that happens sometimes we feel like we should have known better, right? We could have done something differently. And for me is the idea of also surrendering and seeing it for what it is, right? And again, I'm planting seeds of grace, of gratitude. And ultimately, my life is abundant in spite of the losses, so many losses, but that there are so many goodness in my life now, then, and I know there's more to come in the future. So I'm grateful for that. So again, thank you to each one of you for listening, for watching. I hope to come back. I will come back. Not hope. I will come back to share more. And I encourage all of you to share those stories, right? Not just the good stuff or the highlights, right? Sometimes we only share when things are working out, but share the thing that truly defines you. Share all of it, right? Not just the good stuff. Share the things that you got over. Share the things that have truly helped you grow into who you are today. Share the things that are so hard that you want to hide them, right? And I think that's a beautiful way to come out of darkness and be the light. Be the light. And to not be afraid to know that sharing your story, even when you're scared to do so, make you stronger. And that you ultimately can see yourself. There's so much clarity sometimes when we are able to do that, right? And so I'm grateful I can do it. I'm grateful that many of you around me within so many different communities have given me permission through watching you and observing you and listening to your stories, that I too have the courage to share mine and not feel shame, not feel I should have known better, not feel like I could have, right? And to give myself grace. Now that I know better, I do better, right? Maya would be proud. When you know better, you do better. And that's the lesson that I want to continue sharing, and but more importantly, being, right? I'm in the process of unbecoming and becoming, so I can be the greatest version of myself. So beyond grateful to still be here and get to learn those lessons and get to be in this season and get to continue to plant seeds, because I still have breath. I still get to get another day. And that means I can start over. I can start fresh and keep planting those seeds every single day. So again, thank you. And I will be seeing you next time.